Today, we're going to talk about the Republican decision to move forward with an impeachment inquiry and whether it'll actually hurt Joe Biden. And I interview Congressman Jared Moskowitz about that very effort, whether he thinks Republicans will actually end up holding an impeachment vote or just drag this thing out for the next 11 months, and his thoughts on George Santos' new venture outside of Congress. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. The House has now formally voted to move forward with an impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden, so I want to talk about why this is happening, but also more importantly, whether it'll impact Joe Biden. Now, of course, this whole thing was done with the blessing of Mike Johnson, who only 4 short years ago railed mercilessly against the prospect of a one-party impeachment.
The founding fathers, the founders of this country, warned against single-party impeachment. They said that it would be bitterly divisive, perhaps irreparably divisive for the country. The founders of this country warned us against a single-party impeachment because they feared it would bitterly and perhaps irreparably divide our nation. The founders of this country warned against a single-party impeachment. You know why? You guys know why. Because they feared it would bitterly and perhaps irreparably divide our nation.
The founding fathers warned us. I mean, they feared a single-party impeachment. They knew that it would bitterly divide the country. It might be irreparable damage to the country.
And of course, now we're in the midst of, you guessed it, a one-party impeachment. And even the invocation of the founding fathers themselves was apparently not enough to dissuade Mike Johnson from plowing forward. And before I say another word, it would be wholly irresponsible of me not to mention that conspicuously absent in this impeachment effort of Joe Biden is evidence of any wrongdoing by Joe Biden. And that's something that Republicans admit. They're saying now that they need to open an impeachment inquiry so that they can find evidence of high crimes or misdemeanors. But that's not how any of this works. You don't start the process of prosecuting someone so that you can hopefully find proof that they did something worth prosecuting them for. You prosecute them because you already have some proof. Jamie Raskin lays this out perfectly when he says that normally you watch a whodunit where you have a crime and figure out who committed it. In this case, it's a what is it? Because they've got Joe Biden, but no one has any clue what he actually did. And by the way, don't take my word for it. Republicans are being asked to explain what evidence of a crime they have, and this is one example of how those conversations are going.
What is the specific constitutional crime that you're investigating?
Well, we're having an inquiry, so we can do an investigation and control the production of witnesses.
And what is the crime you're investigating?
And documents. High crimes, misdemeanors, and bribery.
What high crime and misdemeanor are you investigating?
Look, I will, once I get time, I will explain what we're looking at, and I will make the equivalency.
No, I'm just asking you
the
for
last impeachment.
And yet still that hasn't slowed them down, and the reason here is obvious. They need to offer up the optics of corruption by Joe Biden. There will come a point where this will be dragged out so long and become such a long-running bit on right-wing media that people will begin to believe that he did do something wrong, regardless of the fact that there is not a modicum of evidence actually proving as much. It is a well-trod path for Republicans. This is exactly the same playbook that they used against Hillary Clinton, where they hammered away at her email scandal relentlessly to the point where the entire Republican base believed that she'd committed the gravest national security sin in modern American history. And of course, that wasn't even close to true, because if they actually believed the bullshit that they were spewing, they would have mentioned it even once when Ivanka Trump got caught doing the exact same thing in the Trump White House. But guess it's only dangerous when a Democrat does it. In any case, it worked back in 2016, and they want it to work again now, which is why they're plowing ahead with this sham effort despite no evidence to actually back it up, which raises the question, can it work? And the answer is yes. Again, it's worked before. Hillary is proof of that. They know what they're doing. They know if they can pepper their audience and their supporters with the same narrative day in and day out, that eventually it'll start to stick. But here's the difference. The left largely ignored the Hillary email stuff because we assumed it wasn't worth our energy to respond, that we wouldn't validate what was clearly a political hit job by reacting to it. And what did that do? It created a vacuum on the left that the right was perfectly content to fill with disinformation. They got to run that campaign for months and months and months with zero pushback. They dictated the terms of the narrative. And because they were unopposed, their narrative won out. So with that in mind, we cannot cede this ground to the purveyors of disinformation on the right. Come out fast and loud about the fact that there is zero evidence of wrongdoing, that the only quote-unquote smoking gun they've presented is like a $1,300 car loan repayment. that their own witnesses, including right-wing hack Jonathan Turley, said during their only impeachment inquiry hearing that there is no basis for impeachment, that Republican senators are coming out now and saying that there's no basis for impeachment. If they want to plow ahead with this nakedly partisan scheme, then we have to recognize that this is a target-rich environment and hammer away at them. Look, the fact that there's no justification to impeach Joe Biden is an issue that unites the Democrats and divides the Republicans. When we have issues like that, issues that we are clearly on the correct side of, we shouldn't be afraid to exploit them. Republicans are quite literally lying, so there's no reason whatsoever that we shouldn't crush them day in and day out on this issue. The reality is that Republicans benefited from Democrats pretending that the lies would never hurt them last time. This time, we all know better. We very clearly own the truth, so we should absolutely also own the narrative. Here's a preview of my interview with Jared Moskowitz. Republicans are going to continue finding no evidence against Joe Biden, but that doesn't seem to matter to Republicans because they still get the optics of corruption, and at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for. So can you speak to that?
Well, no, there's definitely a level of let's drag this out as long as we can. Let's prosecute it in the media. We'll go on Fox News. We'll go on Newsmax. We'll go on OWN where they don't ask us any tough questions. You've seen what happens when they go on other networks and they ask tough questions about the evidence. James Comer, he's like Nick Cage and National Treasure. He's just like all over the place and he can't answer any of the stuff. But that's really what they're doing at the moment. They're going to prosecute this in the press. They'll say, well, look at Joe Biden's numbers. They'll take full credit for that. Donald Trump, who's given these instructions to the Republicans to do this because he doesn't want to be the only one who's been impeached
right.
Twice.
Kind of to devalue this whole process and to say, look, everybody can get impeached now.
Correct. Because really what he wanted is he wanted the Republicans to remove the impeachments. Remember that those bills were filed to expunge the impeachment, something we've not seen ever before. That didn't go anywhere. So when that Trump plan didn't work, they're going with this plan, which is, let's try to muddy up Joe Biden. And so, that's really the focus. But again, look, Speaker Johnson, he's in charge of this. He's really delivering for Donald Trump. It's not about the evidence. We are really continuing to devalue the point of impeachment, and we're continuing to break the institution every single solitary day. Congress doesn't really do much anymore. Other than, like I said, remove a speaker, remove a member, and open up an impeachment inquiry with zero evidence.
Do you think they'll actually vote on an impeachment at any point in the next 11 months, or just keep this process going to give the optics of corruption?
No. They're going to vote. I've had this debate with a lot of the moderate members who have said, well, I'm not for impeaching the president, but, there's enough to open up an inquiry. And I have said, right, but that starts the clock. Right, because here are the two things that are definitely sure. One is once they open up an impeachment inquiry, are the Republicans going to do this for 6 months and say, well, we still haven't found anything, which is why we're not doing the impeachment, right? Because that's what the media is going to say, which is if you found overwhelming evidence, why haven't you impeached him? The second thing is, do you think the Freedom Caucus and Marjorie Taylor Greene are going to let them not do an impeachment vote? Right, she's going to call for it. It's going to be a privileged motion. They're going to continue to try to force an impeachment vote. So they've backed themselves into the corner. These moderates who represent Biden districts, there's like 15 or 16 of them that represent Biden districts that Biden won in the election. They're going to have to explain to the American people when they eventually have to take that impeachment vote, why they voted one way or another. And oh, by the way, if they vote against impeachment, right? I mean, that's really an interesting political question. They only have a 4-vote majority, which is continuing to dwindle by the moment. And so there's no room for error. If they don't have all those moderates on board for impeachment, they can't call the vote because then it would fail, which it should fail because there isn't any evidence. But that's not going to be what makes Donald Trump happy. He'll be very upset about that.
To watch the full interview with Jared Moskowitz, click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also listen to the audio version of this episode by clicking that link on the screen. And finally, to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.